Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. This is me, your host, Preacher Moss, on the SOS, the Shout Out Show. Thank you for joining me on a Sunday. I know you could have been a whole lot of places, but you decided to spend this 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes with me today, and I appreciate you. For those that are joined on the show the first time, we hope you come back. For those who have come back, you know I love you and I appreciate you. So let's get down to business. Today's topic, what are we missing with Black Lives Matter and white supremacy? What are we missing? And I decided that I'd do some research. One of the things that's a bit problematic with Black Lives Matter is we haven't done our history. In fact, if anybody knows, Black Lives Matter started in 2013 following the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the murder of Trayvon Martin. At that time, two things happened in 2013, and I'm going to hopefully tie them together. 2013, Black Lives Matter is launched. But Black Lives Matter is not launched as it is. It's not launched as an organization that focuses, has a main focus on recognizing Black transgender issues. Okay, that's number one. And Trayvon Martin was not a case about that. It wasn't even about police brutality back then. It was about stand your ground and the laws, constitutional laws that affected Florida state constitutional law that allowed George Zimmerman to kill a young Black man, Trayvon Martin. Okay, that's number one. So when I started doing the homework, because you have to lay this out a little bit, because I'm seeing some things that could be problematic moving forward. I read the credo about Black Lives Matter. Now, this is not me picking on it, but I'm like, these are the facts that are on the website. Black Lives Matter listed as this, they say we are expansive. We are a collective of liberators who believe in an inclusive and spacious movement. We also believe that in order to win and bring as many people with us along the way, we must move beyond the narrow nationalism that is all too prevalent in Black communities. Wait a minute, you're coming from the Black community. We must ensure we are building a movement that brings all of us to the front, okay? That's one. Number two is this one. We must affirm the lives of Black, queer, trans folks, disabled folks, undocumented folks, folks with records, women, and all Black lives along the gender spectrum. Our network centers those who have been marginalized within the Black community. It spells out very clearly that this movement is meant to deal with aspects in the Black community. That's one thing that happened. The other thing that happened in 2013 and it just got a ruling in mid-June, was Gerald Bostock. Gerald Bostock was in Georgia. I'm not sure what part of Georgia, but long story short, he was gay. He got fired for playing on a gay baseball team, and he was relieved. It was unlawful firing, okay? And we get it. But just in mid-June, they just had a ruling at the Supreme Court level, brothers and sisters, at the Supreme Court level, that ruled in their favor 6-3 that he was unlawfully fired, and it reaffirmed and established again protections for gay LGBT workers in the workplace. Now I'm like, this is weird, because I went back to that time, and you know what? I didn't see any victory signs from Black Lives Matter. No victory signs from Black Lives Matter, and I just told you the manner in which this thing happened. So I'm beginning to understand something, and it's coming to a head, and I'm bringing it up now because we have a lot of people that are involved and invested, and engaged in the idea of Black social justice, but it's not in the full auspices of Black social justice. It is, I'm going to show you the right hand, but I'm not going to show you what the left hand is doing. And that, my brothers and sisters, is problematic. Because you have people who are engaging and yelling Black Lives Matter, but in your heart of hearts, the same people yelling Black Lives Matter, you're accusing them of being narrow, nationalistic, and having to center the idea of black queer, black transgender, all that type of stuff in the middle. Now, I understand. People listen. I understand. If people were to run out and start their own movement that said, "Hey, Black trans lives matter," I don't think that hashtag might trend as well as Black Lives Matter. But I think the thing that was interesting, it said it was a collective. It was a collective. And on that space of collective, I want everybody to know that collectives and teams are two different things. I said this earlier. A collective and a team are two different things. Collective have their own agenda. A team has a group goal. We're going to win. We're going to win at this level. We're going to win at the championship. And when you achieve that goal, then you have consensus on what the next goal is. The collective is interesting because Black Lives Matter, for lack of a better word, is one of the more prevalent leaderless organizations. We don't know who's leading Black Lives Matter. We don't have people in mass giving interviews. I'm the leader. I'm the leader. I'm the leader. And they've learned, because Black civil rights movement. If you yell, "I'm the leader," you probably gonna get shot. If you yell, "I'm the leader," then you're gonna have all kind of people behind you. And it has that scope of anonymity that allows it to grow. Much the same as a lot of groups now that are coming on Facebook with the express intent of coming up with groups to go after Black Lives Matter. Now, I'm saying this because we have a very vital and crucial time in history right now, because we're beginning to look at the fact that things are moving, but they're not moving under the scope of what Black Lives Matter presents itself in its own credo on its website. I like to deal with transparency. I like to deal with people who are being honest. I'm not saying they're not, but I'm saying I have to do my own investigation. Because the thing about Black Lives Matter, when you start doing a little bit of homework, is Black Lives Matter and the gay trans movement, the Black LGBT community suffers from something that they don't want to talk about. They suffer from the fact that their counterparts, their white LGBTQ community counterparts, still enjoy, wait for it, white privilege. And they're not able to say they enjoy white privilege. But it's interesting that you can come after historically Black movements that didn't have to worry about such things. I mean, they did. They had to worry about everything. Let's talk about it. In the 50s, the 60s, the 40s, I'm like, come on, man. And the thing that worries me is that we're not talking about it enough. The Muslim community is in a conundrum right now because we jumped in with both feet and we didn't do our homework. Just the idea of understanding the scope of what it means to be involved in Black Lives Matter. Now, you can break off, you can have your own whatever matter thing, but the truth matters. Black truth matters. And at this point in time, when we were talking about Black Lives Matter back in 2013, we weren't talking about it. It really wasn't a thing. It was a hashtag, blah, 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 blah. But, you play the game, you roll the dice. Racism is always going to be around. And all of these groups know, just like charity groups, nonprofits, you're gonna make some bank and some progress when you have crisis. Everybody can jump on. Everybody is a collective. Nobody is necessarily a team. And what is more important is the fact that looking at this scope a little bit more, even outside of Black Lives Matter, the scope, when you look at it, there are no talks about Black family, Black male social mobility, Black female social mobility. In fact, doing this research for this particular project, it was scary. It was a little scary because I realized, man, that we've been missing the boat a whole lot. Let me engage my old grumpy Black man for you. Old grumpy Black man right now probably would not live with all the political correctness. My granddad, if you were homosexual, he called you homosexual names to let you know you're homosexual, and he let everybody else in the community know you were homosexual. He might call you sissy or fairy or some things like that, but you got the idea. Now, people say he's homophobic. Well, no, my grandfather would say those things because he was wise and he understood what that meant. It meant that there was a separation, if you will, and you had to respect the separation. You see, because all the things that we're talking about with Black Lives Matter, we're not talking about transgender. We're not talking about that. You know what we're talking about? We're talking about equality and protection under the law. Do we have equal protection under the law? This is a constitutional thing. When I brought up this young man, not a young man, but Gerald Bostock, they won a constitutional case in 7 years. Now, I would tell you that Black Lives Matter had nothing to do with this. I doubt it. But they won a case, a constitutional case in 7 years, a 6-3 verdict with a conservative court, and they still won. And Black Lives Matter has yet to be able to do that. Has yet to be able to do that. And the scope is speaking about the narrow and nationalistic movements of African American movement. That's a slap in African American history. People, and all my brothers and sisters out there, I don't care what gender you are, but let's be honest. Let's be really, really honest. There's some things that are awry. You know, this movement, if you will, is a little sleek like when you talk about white supremacy. Because the interesting thing about white supremacy is how it's used in Black language. You don't have to see it, you know it exists. Well, guess what? White supremacy, you don't have to see it, but you know it exists. So you don't have to see a Black man do something, you know he's done something. We're not arresting you for what you did. We know you did something in the past, or we're going to arrest you for something you're going to do in the future. For Muslims, the whole idea of terrorism is as long as I can't see it, I can claim it. Martin Luther King had one of the greatest quotes. We overlook the greatness of this quote. What did he say? He said, injustice anywhere. I forget the quote. He said, you know, the whole idea is something, injustice somewhere is like injustice everywhere. I mean, forgive me about the quote, brothers and sisters. But you know what? It holds a certain term. He was prophetic because he claimed the fact that he knew. A lot of people don't know this. You know, a lot of people try to make a connection between the civil rights movement and the LGBTQ. It didn't happen. It wasn't going to happen because Black men and Black women said the team issue is about equal protection under the law. That's what we're going for. You want gender, start your own group. Bayard Rustin and people like brilliant people, homosexuals. But when it came down, they said, you can't be a part of this right now because this is what we're fighting for. And let's just talk about it. The gay Black movement has not had much traction. And they're constantly in competition with the gay white movement, which enjoys privilege. Because you can take a gay white man, but guess what? You take gay off and he's still a gay white man. So he's going to have privilege that you may not have. Okay. Thank you, Hisham. I appreciate it. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I'm getting old, brother. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Okay? That idea, that principle has been flipped. It's been flipped. And so now to be part of Black Lives Matter in the inner fold, in the very, very inner space of it means that in some regards you have to disregard or discredit what happened before you. You know, I didn't know it. You know, I look at these things, but there's terms I wasn't even aware of when I began this search. Have you ever heard the word? Somebody, Hisham probably heard. He's a smart cat. The word cissexual. Have you heard that word before? Cissexual, CIS sexual, or cisgender. And it's the idea that if you were born a man or a woman and you claim your man or woman identity, it means that in some regards, because you're a man or a woman, you enjoy privilege. I'm like, what? You see, yeah, you enjoy privilege because you're a man or woman, and it's based upon the fact that it's supposed to develop or have balance or normalize the idea of trans identity. I'm like, I'm shocked because now you've made me into something that I'm not. You're giving me a term. And this term, you know, started in 2007. I'm sure sooner or later somebody's going to pick it up and it's going to be in a rally or something like that. But I'm saying it gets away from the natural need of Black life and Black identity. What am I talking about? But thank you. Sham is on the Black Lives Matter website. It gets away from the fact that we're still not enjoying, we still don't have the idea of Black life being safe and being protected. So now you say, well, what is this thing with white supremacy? Well, white supremacy is interesting. I can't say that Black Lives Matter borrow from anything, but it's a certain mimicry that you have to look at. That white supremacist movements don't really have leaders. They have cells. They, like Black Lives Matter, have collectives. They have people with particular agendas at particular places. And that was the aspect of white supremacy. You couldn't come out with a brand of racism that was applicable to everybody, right? So because it's not applicable to everybody, everybody's going to have their own situation and own scenario, and of course their own agenda. When you begin to look at it, I'm like, what am I missing? I'm missing the fact that in some regards, these two balance. It's a weird yin and a yang, if you will. Because Black Lives Matter, the original idea of Black Lives Matter will always be protected because it's always going to be Black folk that stand up with Black identity. Not understanding that other words that come out like cisgender identity, things like that. These things will make you turn around and go, well, who's fighting? Who are you fighting, me, or are we fighting for each other? Now, before we get into a situation where it gets really, really crazy, the idea of protection is something that we have to take a very, very serious look at. Because the idea of protection is the thing that worries me the most. Because as you yell Black Lives Matter and defund the police and things like that, you don't understand that the barbarians at the gate, in terms of white supremacy, the barbarians at the gate have only, in some regards, held back or restrained because they're worried about the idea, the mere thought of protection of the law. You think you're seeing something now? Imagine when there was no protection of the law. My grandfather told me about when the KKK marched on Washington, all 100,000 of them. And it was quite a sight. A couple years later, they had all disbanded. It's the old Superman thing. You know, they gave out the KKK password on Superman when it was on the radio. I think it was, are you Mr. Nyack, which is, are you a Klansman, backward, something like that. But it disbanded. People didn't have that shroud of secrecy. And now, as you have one group that's growing and another group that's fearful, they're still battling this whole idea of protection. Because white supremacists are able to do what they do, legally, illegally, financially, based on the fact that they have this idea, not of rights, brothers and sisters, but protection of the law to do these things. So when you talk about the police do certain things because police, good or bad, feel like they have the protection of the law. If I'm enforcing the law, it means that I have the protection of the law. There's a relationship there you should never forget. And when we begin to look at Black Lives Matter now, it will splinter. I'm worried it'll splinter at the worst time. Because people are going to be in a situation, a scenario where they're going to have to choose. If you watch Facebook, some of the groups that are coming out now, some of the groups that started out supporting the police and things like that, and now they're coming after, of course, they have the anonymity. They're coming at, sorry, Jeff Zuckerberg, they're coming after Black Lives Matter. And the information that I'm giving you right now is something that will splinter Black Lives Matter. Because people are going to be going, wait a minute, is this what I really signed up for? Is this what this organization was still about? And a lot of folks are going to go, well, yeah. And they're going to go, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for that. Black Lives Matter is a hashtag. Black existence is the reality. And I've told everyone on this show numerous times, one of the aspects of being Black in America is you wake up every day knowing that you're what? Not safe. And how do we say you're not safe? Because you watch your grandparents, you watch your father, your cousins, and in the best of times, we'll all have a wonderful time. You hear a siren and everybody will stop, knowing they didn't do anything, But the police presence puts a fear in your heart, thinking if they ain't not coming for me, who are they coming for? And that becomes the news and the focus, if you will. It means clearly in your mind, you don't have protection. So what am I saying? Black Lives Matter, you got a little explaining to do, but I'm saying in a nice, kind way, please explain yourself. Because people are making investments in this thing and they don't know about the other thing. They don't know about the other aspect. It's something akin to, I'm invited to somebody's house for a party, right? I get there, the food's there, the drink's there, there's people there. We're having a great time. and somebody, a group walk in, and they go, "All right, everybody, welcome to the fundraiser for LGBTQ." And I'm going, "Wait a minute, I thought this was just a party." Let me back up because I want people to catch this. One of the things in the Black community that folks don't understand, and the difference between the Black queer community and the non-Black queer community, is history. It's history. And that history has a pecking order. That history has a pecking order. And history starts with how we exist, how we evolve, how we fight, and then after that, there's choices. Gender, things like that. Where I want to live. It's choices. And if the first level is not satisfactory or satisfied, you're never going to get to the next level. You see, because back in the day, they just had a anniversary for something. It was it was a gay riot. They just had that recently, and they talked about that on TV. And I checked it out. I'm like, hey man, you got to stand on your own 2 feet. I get it, but in the Black community, they couldn't stand on their own 2 feet, not like that, because just like Malcolm said, when the police bust you upside your head, they don't worry if you're a Muslim or Democrat or Republican. They bust you up your head because you're Black. But it's the same thing because they don't care if you're gay. They bust you upside the head if you're gay. Now, let me begin to wrap this up because I don't want it to be a problem. In fact, I'm gonna put this up for my brother right here. Yeah. There you go. So this idea, if you will, and just some small things. This idea, and thank you, Hisham, for putting that on the Black Lives Matter, putting up that information. Just this general, it bothered me because I never saw myself like that. But now people are putting me in a particular light. People putting folks in a particular light, and they don't even know that they're in that light. We call somebody racist, it's because there's a cause. We call you, if you're institutional racism, it's because it's there. It's a history. But now you put out conceptual things that people don't necessarily understand, and if they understood, they would take issue with it. It can't be on. I almost said the DL. I don't want to say that, but it must be transparent because we're not talking about the trans. We're talking about the future of our families. Because one of the things, I looked at Black Lives Matter. Are they really talking about families? They talk about education, things like that. The idea is we have to bring as many people along as we can, says that maybe your idea doesn't stand on its own 2 feet right now. And maybe the romanticism of protest and the romanticism of sticking it to the man and putting a black fist in the air and yelling, no justice, no peace, it allows you a place in the argument. I give you that. Have your place in the argument. However, your argument can't take up the whole place. So, brothers and sisters, as I said before, when you start looking at it, what is white supremacy? White supremacy is just like Black Lives Matter in that it's a leaderless organization. When they can never prove terrorism around Muslims, you know what they say? It sells. Do you know how hard it is with the naked eye to see a cell? You need a microscope to see a cell. However, these people with no microscope can see cells everywhere. It means if I can't see it, it's probably there. So now, terrorism, I can't find it. I can't put my finger on it. So it must be in the mosque. It must be the convention. It must be in Sharia. And white supremacy has pretty much floated along with that. But even white supremacy has had to give way. Because you know what I didn't see? You know what I didn't see about this thing with Mr. Greg Bostock and the Supreme Court ruling 6-3 upholding the rights of homosexuals in the workplace? You know what I didn't see? I didn't see an outpouring of hate, Facebook posts, Instagram posts, videos, press conference from who? White supremacists. Because even white supremacists, in this regard, acknowledge privilege among the gay and lesbians in their community. Is that a crazy concept? And black folk, we still fight. And we don't have that privilege. We don't have the privilege at this point in time to stop and break everybody down and find out what their feelings are. Again, as my brother said in his post, we're talking about circumstances. And there's a reason why Black Lives Matter is popular now, and it wasn't popular in 2013, because we're talking about a young black man being killed. We're talking about how the law works. We're talking about police brutality. These things shift. When you look at the old civil rights movement, the thing was about justice, 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 justice. Now it's not as strong as it used to be. People say it's archaic. So you have these other arguments that come around now. Now there's space, if you will, to move away from the quote unquote narrow nationalistic movements prevalent in black movements. So listen, I'm going to leave it there. I just want you to marinate a little bit on that. And this is not hate speech, anything like that. Everything I came up with was a calm voice, and I went to the source, brothers and sisters. And all I'm saying is, before it becomes too late, you need to go to the source and understand what it is when you stick your hand up and you go, Black Lives Matter. Does your black existence matter? Is it being used? Is it being co-opted? Ask the question. And after that, make a decision. Do we still need to be out on the street? Yes. Do we still need to be protesting? Yes. But I need to know who's on my team and what the agenda is. Are we a team or are we a collective? I would like to think we're a team. You see, because there has to be a protocol in what we're going to ask for. And that's going to be the other thing. You see, we are building to a situation where white supremacy is compromised. It'll never go away. It's compromised. It's hurt. It's bleeding. Somebody's about to throw in the towel, if you will. And they're going to ask as strategy, knowing that some of us, we can't answer the question. They're going to ask as strategy, wait for it, what do you want? Black Lives Matter, what do you want? And that's going to be the situation scenario where people are going to go, let me step to the front of the line now. Thank you, black people, for protesting, And I just read that statement. A lot of people say, there are white people coming to the Black Lives Matter. Now you know why. Now you know why. That's a strategy. Now, I'm not hating on folks, but I just call it as is. I would call it on myself if I was on some BS. You know what I'm saying? And, hey, listen, I learned something. A good scholar homie of mine said, hey, listen, man, he said, listen, I'm not anti-gay, anti-lesbian. He said, look, man, I respect. He said, I acknowledge that's what it is. He said, but you can't make me accept it. All right? I acknowledge it. I respect is there, but you can't make me accept it. It's a big difference. And in regards, by association, we may have accepted something that we're going to have to pay for later. And this is not against, like I said, this is not against these folks or anything, but I'm saying, as a person who protested, college, outside of college, what we always understood was we knew what the goal was. And that's the reason why you had to have a leader. This is a leader's organization. The reason you had to have a leader is because that leader had to be held accountable for the vision and the plan. And if the leader didn't follow the vision and the plan, then we got another leader. Or if it's something was questionable, we could question your tactics. And if need be, if you weren't effective, we could bring in another leader. Ask the NAACP. They probably had like 100 leadership changes in the last 15 days. But my point is, there's going to come a time where they're going to ask, not black people, but Black Lives Matter, what do you want? And you have to figure out, is your voice going to be heard or another agenda? I'm Preacher Moss. I'll talk about white supremacy tomorrow, because even white supremacy, when they ask them what they don't know. And be very careful. I saw something on TV, I think it was Instagram, about a lot of black men arming themselves. You don't know the barbarians at the gate, as I said before, because these people haven't known what they wanted in a long time. They just knew that they didn't want you to have it. So they didn't want you to have guns. They didn't want you to have education because they want you to be compromised. Now, they're feeling like they don't have the protection of the law. And in current leadership, the gate could easily rise. And we're back in the Civil War. Preacher Moss, SOS Shout Out Show. Holla!